Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 3 are going to present the material about the translation of metaphors. Before we start the presentation, let me introduce my group first. The first is me, Aryan Abraham Muhajir. Next is Solmayatri, Fibrisha Sudan, Rio Rahmatala, Muhammad Alfian, Lempan, and Andre Edison Kambuno. The first material are going to present by me. Definition: translation of metaphors is any figurative expression, the transferred sense of a physical word, the personification of an abstraction, the application of a word or collection to what it does not literally deny, to describe one thing in terms of another. All polysemous words, a heavy heart, and most English phrasal verb put off, disorder, trouble, or each other, are potentially metaphorical. The purpose of metaphor is basically to hold. Its referential purpose is to describe a mental process or state, a concept, a person, an object, a quality, or an action more comprehensively and concisely than is possible in literal or physical language. Its pragmatic purpose, which is simultaneous, is to appeal to the senses, to interest, to clarify, graphically, to please, to delight, to surprise, and usually cultural metaphors are harder to translate than universal or personal metaphors. I see language now primarily as a deposit expressing a culture, but as a medium for expressing universal and personality as well. The next is translating metaphors. Whenever you meet a sentence that is grammatical but does not appear to make sense, you have to test its apparently nonsensical element for a possible metaphorical meaning. If it is an authoritative or expressive text, you translate in the afternoon the rain always killed the window panes, and perhaps leave interpretation for a footnote. But if it is an anonymous text, you must make an attempt. In the afternoon, the rain darkens, muffles, blocks the light from the window's panes. You cannot avoid this. You have to make sense of everything. Okay, the next is types of metaphor. There are 6 types of metaphor: dead, clean, stock, adapted, recent, and original, and discuss them in relation to their contextual factor and translation procedures. For the first types of metaphors are going to present by Andre Edison Kambuno. For Andre Edison Kambuno, time is yours.
Okay. That metaphor is metaphor where one is hardly conscious of the image. Frequently relate to universal term of space and time, the main part of the body, general ecological feature, and the main human activity. For English, words such as space, field, line, top, bottom, foot, mouth, arm, circle, drop, fall, and rise. They are particularly used graphically for concept and for the language of science to clarify or define. Normally, that metaphors are not difficult to translate, but they often defy literal translation and therefore offer choices. Thus, for in the field of human knowledge, French has domain or sphere, German Bereich or Gebiet, and the Russian Oblast. For at the bottom of the hill, French has Au fond de la colline, but German only has Dorf des Bergs. Some simple artifacts such as bridge, chain, link also as that metaphor in some contexts, and these are often translated literally. Lastly, common word may attain a narrow technical sense in certain concepts. Example: dog, fin, element, jack, aber or shaft, blade or bracket or métier or loom, matter, nut. Note that in English, at least, that metaphor can be livened up, sometimes into metonymy, by conversion to phrasal verb, drop out, wake up, and this must be accounted for in the translation, or in marginal, metric, and balance. Thank you.
Cliché metaphors. A cliché is an element of an artistic work, saying, or idea that has become overused to the point of losing its original meaning or effect, even to the point of being weird or irritating, especially when at some earlier time it was considered meaningful. Cliché metaphors are used as a substitute for clear thought, often emotively but without corresponding to the fact of the matter. Take this passage from a spacious editorial. The country school will in effect become not a backwater, but a breakthrough in education or development which will set trends for the future. If this were part of a political speech or any other statement, the same translation procedure would be appropriate. Cliches of any kind, such as collocation or as well as metaphors, should be avoided when they are used in an anonymous text where only facts or theories are sacred and by agreement with the source language author, where the translation is trying to obtain an optimum reaction from the readership. It is up to you to decide whether it is appropriate to use the word cliché or stock as a metaphor in a text.
Okay, our next material is stock or standard metaphors. A stock or metaphor is an established metaphor which in an informal context is an efficient and concise method of covering a physical and or mental situation. A stock metaphor has a certain emotional worth and which is not deadened by overuse. You may have noticed that I dislike stock of metaphors, but admit that they keep the world and society going. They oil the wheels. You should not use a stock metaphor that does not come naturally to you. He is in a giving humor, or he is on the eve of getting married. All these are in the Harap dictionary, but they have the implications of utterance. They are first for me. The metaphor in store can be translated as an reserve in many, but not all collocations, and in a fewer as auf Lager haben. This is rare extended metaphors, but probably more common for English German than English French, more common for single universal metaphors such as wooden face. The main senses are symbolized by their organs, plus the palate. For taste, non-cultural proverbs may transfer their image. All the glitter isn't gold. Gold was. When translating stock metaphors, a common produce is to replace the ASL image with another established TL image, if one exists that is equally frequent within the register. One-word metaphors are rare, a drain on resources. When the metaphors derive from the same topic, equivalence is closer. Hold all the cards. CF. Note that the French and German are stronger than the English, which can keep the same image. Hold all the trumps. English typical cultural source of metaphor may be cricket. Ball out, ball over on a good sticky wicket. That's not cricket. CF. Fair play, fair. I'm stumped. Feel a question. Not that all these metaphors are mild and educated middle class, and you normally have to resist the temptation to translate them to colloquially and strongly. Fair play has gone into many European language, which represents weakness of foreign translators. A stock metaphor can only be translated exactly if the image is transferred within a correspondingly acceptable and established collocation. As soon as you produce a new image, however acceptable the metaphor, there is a degree of change of meaning and usually of tone. Everything is possible, even the reproduction of the sound effects, but at the cost of economy. A sunny smile could be translated as, but neither translation has the warmth, brightness, attractiveness of the English metaphor. I can read him like a book has an immediacy which is lacking even in I can read him as in a book. For a metaphor such as, you may wish to keep the vividness of visibly ensnared in the spider's web of compromise and accommodation. The meaning of a word such as clockwork can be explicated referentially, left abruptly, finally, decisively, or pragmatically, with a bang, vehemently, with a snap. You have to bear in mind that reducing a stock metaphor to sense may clarify, demystify, make honest a somewhat tendentious statement. Sometimes it is possible to do this naturally, where the TL has no metaphorical equivalent for a political euphemism. They cluster around death, sex, excretion, war, and employment. They are the handiest means of discussing the truth of physical fact. Sometimes stock cultural metaphors can be translated by retaining the metaphor or converting it to simile and adding the sense. The Mozart method is particularly appropriate for a eponymous stock or original metaphor. For example, a resounding, lugubrious, etc. adjective such as Victor Hugo may have used. Stock metaphors in an anonymous text may be omitted if they are redundant. I see no point in his sharp, razor-edged wit. The use of that rather than stock metaphors in language is more common in non-literary text than in literary text. This may be because they are less formal or an attempt to enliven the style of an informative text. Expressions like can be translated as "that's the point here" or "he put off doing that." This producer may be better applied to verbs than to nouns or adjectives, since these metaphorical variants tackle, deal with, see, go into, take up, look into a subject are often less obtrusive than other types of metaphors.
Okay, the next material is about adapted metaphor. In translation, an adapted stock metaphor should, where possible, be translated by an equivalent adapted metaphor, particularly in a text as secret as one by Reagan. If it were translated literally, it might be incomprehensible. Thus, the ball is a little in their court. C is spelled Edgar, A is the jeweler, so division, summer, LA division, which is in fact normal and natural. In other cases, one has to reduce to sense, get them in the door, les introduire, faire le premier pas, outself, friends of all competitors, épuiser nos produits et nos concurrents. The special difficulty with this sacred text is that one know they are not written by their author, so one is tempted to translate more smartly than the original. There are various teachers of adapted stock metaphors, almost carrying close to Newcastle, Rescue, Porter, the LA Riviera, pouring good weather, and the Whistles. Good weather, Simotor, View, enthusiasts, or police engines. But since their sense is normally clear, the translation should err on the side of caution and comprehension.
Next is about recent metaphor. By recent metaphor, often anonymously coined. When these designates a recently current object or process, it's a metonym. Otherwise, it may be a new metaphor designating one of a number of prototypical qualities that continually renew themselves in language. For example, good, groovy, sensuous, fab, drunk, pissed out, quit, without money, skinned, sans the Lord, stupid, spastic, spasmoid, having sex, doing a line, having orgasm, making it, coming, the last, policeman, fuzz, flick. Recent metaphor designating new object or processes are treated like other neologisms, with particular reference to the exportability of the referent and the level of language of the metaphor. For another example, Walkman, a trade name, should be decommercialized if possible, transinterpretative. Thank you.
Okay, the next material is original metaphors. We must now consider the original metaphors created or created by the SL others. In principle, in adjustative and expressive texts, this must be translated literally, whether it is universal, cultural, or subjective is unclear. I set this up as a principle because the original metaphors contains the essence of the other's important message, and it's a source of enrichment for the target language. The metaphor is virtually a literal retelling, and the readers of each version are faced with visually the same difficulties of interpretation. However, if an original cultural metaphor appears to you to be a little obscure and not very important, you can sometimes replace it with descriptive metaphors or reduce it to sense. Original or odd metaphors in most informative texts are open to a variety of translation, produced usually depending on whether the translator wants to imply the sense or the image.
I think that's all for our presentation today, and thank you for your attention, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.